Under the heavy stillness of the Amazon dusk, when the last shafts of light fracture through the canopy and the understory begins to fill with the muted calls of night, the puma begins its circuit. It does not own a single territory in the way jaguars often do. Instead, its range extends like a living corridor, a broad and fluid territory that links the dim floodplains below to the higher terra firma ridges above. Few predators here bridge such distances with the same quiet determination. Each patrol is more than a hunt. It is a thread sewn into the fabric of the forest, keeping prey from clustering too tightly, reshaping movements that ripple outward through the ecosystem like unseen pressure lines. The puma's power lies not in overwhelming strength, though it can bring down prey far heavier than itself, but in its versatility. Unlike the jaguar, which has evolved for a single devastating ambush, the puma embodies adaptation. It travels farther, watches longer, and shifts between strategies with the subtlety of water changing its course. Its pale coat blends seamlessly with both the mottled leaf litter and the dusty clay ridges that skirt the river valleys. Even in fading light, its outline is little more than a ripple in the foliage, a momentary suggestion of form that disappears before the eye confirms it. Such camouflage is only the beginning. The puma's vision is tuned to the low light of dawn and dusk, granting it dominance in hours when herbivores are caught between hunger and caution, venturing from cover to feed while still wary of the darkness gathering at the margins. The stalk itself is a lesson in patience. The puma lowers its body, shoulders flexing in a rolling rhythm, weight distributed carefully across padded paws that mute each step. Unlike the sprinting cats of open grasslands, it relies less on speed than on precision. A burst of acceleration delivered at precisely the right angle, covering the gap before the prey has even finished its first turn. The leap is a compression of power, the forelimbs closing around ribs or throat, the jaws fastening in a decisive grip. For medium-sized herbivores, deer, agouti, peccary, this attack is final. Larger prey may stagger away, but rarely escape unscathed. The puma can bleed its target with relentless pursuit, circling back until weakness tips the balance. But the story of the puma extends beyond the kill. Its role as hunter shapes the very rhythms of its prey. Without the steady pressure of predation, herbivore numbers would swell, grazing lines would push deeper into sensitive vegetation, and the boom and bust cycles of overpopulation and collapse would return with destructive force. The puma smooths these extremes. By targeting individuals, often the less vigilant, sometimes the strong, it forces herds to disperse into smaller, more cautious groups. This dispersal creates breathing space for seedlings and prevents the kind of overgrazing that would leave open scars in the understory. Over generations, it even adjusts the clock of the forest. Prey shift their foraging times, grazing at different hours or along alternate paths to avoid predictable ambushes. In this way, the puma bends not just the movements of animals, but the growth of plants, the spread of seeds, and the hidden architecture of the forest floor. To understand the puma's ecological role, one must also follow its trails across topography. Where jaguars prefer river edges, the puma patrols ridgelines, dry paths that serve as natural highways between ecosystems. These routes are not arbitrary. Herbivores travel them as well, drawn to the safety of higher ground during floods, or to patches of fruiting trees whose cycles only the most persistent browsers can anticipate. The puma maps these rhythms as surely as any researcher, arriving not by chance, but by long memory of seasons and routes. In wet months, it may follow capybara trails from river to river. In drier spells, it switches to the deer and armadillos that forage upland. Such flexibility allows it to persist where jaguars fade, weaving into ecosystems across both the Amazon basin and far beyond, into mountains, deserts, and even the edges of human settlement. The physiological engine behind these wide-ranging hunts is equally remarkable. Pumas possess lungs and a cardiovascular system optimized for short bursts of extreme exertion, but they also conserve energy through their methodical pacing between encounters. Their muscles store oxygen efficiently in myoglobin, enabling those sudden sprints even after long hours of low-intensity patrol. Unlike canids, they cannot sustain a chase across vast distances, but unlike jaguars, they do not need water or cover to strike. They exist in the balance, built to travel, built to wait, built to act with explosive precision. Predator-prey relationships are never one-sided. Pumas themselves must navigate the constant threat of larger competitors. Jaguars, heavier and more powerfully armed, will not tolerate them at close quarters, and a puma's kill may quickly be lost if the larger cat appears. Rather than confrontation, the puma survives through avoidance. It feeds quickly, caches when possible, and shifts its routes often, reducing the risk of overlap. This behavior underscores its role as the wide-radius hunter, not bound to any single hunting ground, but roaming broadly, using distance as its shield and strategy. Even scavengers, vultures, foxes, ocelots, depend on its leftovers, linking it further into the web of rainforest life. The evolutionary history of the puma adds another dimension to its story. Unlike jaguars, which evolved entirely within the Americas, the puma's lineage traces back to ancestors that spread widely across continents. Its body plan reflects this history, not specialized for one habitat, but tuned for many, a generalist predator honed by environments as diverse as snowfields, savannas, and desert canyons. This adaptability explains why it thrives in the Amazon alongside species more narrowly adapted to wet forest life. The puma is both outsider and native, a cosmopolitan predator whose presence reveals the forest's hidden connections to a wider evolutionary theater. To see the puma is rare. More often, one finds the evidence of its passing, a set of rounded tracks pressed into damp soil, a drag mark where prey has been pulled under cover, or the distant alarm calls of monkeys and birds cascading through the canopy like a chain reaction. These signs are fragments of a larger story, one told through absence as much as presence. The forest becomes quieter, prey animals more vigilant, trails subtly altered. Even without direct sighting, the effect of the hunter radiates outward, shaping landscapes invisibly but profoundly. Ultimately, the puma embodies the principle that power in the rainforest is not always about dominance or spectacle. Unlike the jaguar's dramatic ambush or the anaconda's crushing coils, the puma's influence lies in persistence and subtlety. It is the quiet regulator, the unseen enforcer, whose movements maintain balance without ever calling attention to themselves. Its wide-ranging patrols stitch together ecosystems that would otherwise drift into imbalance, ensuring that no herd grows too bold, no clearing too bare, no rhythm too predictable. In its shadow, life reorganizes itself into a more sustainable pattern. The puma's story, then, is not just of survival, but of governance. Governance delivered without intention, but effective nonetheless. Each step across the ridge, each silent approach through the leaf litter, is part of an unspoken contract with the forest. The prey live in fear of it, yet depend on its presence. The plants thrive because of it, though they never feel its touch. And the forest itself holds together through its wide, circling watch. To follow the puma's trail is to glimpse the hidden architecture of the Amazon, not as chaos, but as a system regulated by shadows. Shadows that move on padded feet, vanishing before the eye, leaving only the knowledge that they are always near. The forest at night is never still. Beneath the cover of tangled vines and giant buttress roots, an orchestra of rustles, chirps and wing beats betrays the lives of countless small creatures navigating the darkness. It is in this world of faint movements and muffled calls that the ocelot thrives. Compact and muscular, with a coat painted in whorls and rosettes that dissolve into the dappled shadows, the ocelot is the quintessential nocturnal hunter of the Amazon. Where the puma prowls the ridges and the jaguar stalks the rivers, the ocelot remains hidden in the middle ground, an arbiter of small lives, a regulator of abundance that would otherwise spiral unchecked. Its kingdom is measured not in kilometers of patrol, but in the delicate balance of rodents, birds, reptiles, and monkeys that thread through the forest each night. The ocelot's body is an instrument tuned to the fine details of the nocturnal realm. Its eyes, wide and luminous, reflect even the faintest starlight, transforming murky understory shadows into navigable terrain. Within its ears lies a precision-guided radar. Each twitch and pivot calibrates the hunter to the faint scrabble of claws on bark or the scuttle of a beetle through dry leaf litter. Unlike the big cats that depend on strength to overpower heavy prey, the ocelot relies on this sensory mastery. Its paws press silently against the earth, pads cushioned by tufts of fur that scatter pressure evenly, muting each step. When it halts, the forest noise flows around it, unaware that a predator has paused to translate vibrations and echoes into coordinates for a sudden strike. The diet of the ocelot reveals the breadth of its ecological reach. Rodents form the core, ranging from palm rats to spiny mice that proliferate during fruiting events. These rodent surges can strip fallen seeds and seedlings in days, threatening the regeneration of entire patches of forest. But under ocelot pressure, outbreaks rarely last. By thinning the numbers of rodents, the ocelot indirectly secures the future of saplings and the continuation of fruiting trees that sustain larger herbivores and primates. Each kill is therefore more than a meal. It is a stabilizing action, holding in check the boom and bust cycles of creatures whose populations could otherwise overwhelm the system. This predation ripples outward in unexpected ways. Ground nesting birds, for instance, adjust their breeding calendars to avoid peak periods of ocelot activity. Some species lay eggs earlier in the year. Others shift nesting sites higher into the understory, where the smaller cats have less reach. Even small primates, marmosets and tamarins, modify their nightly routes in subtle deference to ocelot patrols, leaping across branches in arcs designed to avoid descending too close to the ground. What may seem like minor adjustments accumulate across seasons into evolutionary patterns. Species that survive are those that read the predator's rhythm and adapt accordingly. Unlike jaguars and pumas, which need large territories and expansive hunting grounds, the ocelot thrives in smaller ranges, often overlapping with others of its kind. This density makes it one of the most common medium predators in the forest, but abundance does not diminish its importance. Instead, it elevates the ocelot into a central role as a mesopredator, a category that describes carnivores too small to dominate large prey, but critical in shaping the web of smaller species. Mesopredators act as keystone regulators, ensuring that rodents do not overrun the forest floor, that lizards and snakes do not monopolize insect prey, and that birds and primates navigate a constant atmosphere of calculated risk. Remove this middle layer and the lower tiers would explode in numbers, choking the ecosystem with imbalance. The ocelot's physical adaptations underscore its role. Its teeth are sharp but not oversized, suited for quick punctures and shearing through delicate bones rather than cracking skulls or crushing shells. Its claws, retractable and razor-edged, serve both as weapons and as anchors for climbing, an essential skill for ambushing arboreal prey or caching food away from competitors. Its digestive system processes small meals efficiently, allowing the cat to feed frequently and opportunistically. Thermoregulation, too, plays a part. The ocelot's relatively small size compared to larger cats means it sheds heat quickly, enabling sustained activity during warm, humid nights when bigger predators must conserve energy. These details, while subtle, are what allow the ocelot to maintain constant pressure on a wide spectrum of prey without exhausting itself. One might imagine such a predator as solitary, existing only in the context of its hunts. But the ocelot's life is woven with signs and signals. Scent marks along tree trunks, urine trails through undergrowth, and clawed posts at strategic crossing points tell the silent story of its presence to others. Though they avoid direct contact, ocelots shape their territories through these cues, creating invisible boundaries that reduce conflict while still allowing overlap. These shared spaces mirror the delicate balances the cats enforce on their prey, boundaries maintained not by force, but by negotiation, a quiet system of coexistence written in scents and scratches. Predator-prey dynamics are rarely static, and the ocelot itself is not immune to pressure from above. Jaguars will kill them given the chance, not necessarily for food, but as competition removal. Harpy eagles with talons longer than a grizzly bear's claws have been known to take young ocelots from perches. Yet these dangers are part of the same web the ocelot itself helps weave. Its survival strategy is not confrontation, but evasion, blending into shadows, avoiding open spaces, and relying on acute awareness to detect the subtle shifts in forest sound that signal approaching danger. In this way, the ocelot exists in constant balance, not just predator, but prey, part of a continuum where vigilance is survival. Beyond the biological, the ocelot occupies a curious place in human imagination. For centuries it has appeared in myths and folklore as a creature of mystery, often depicted as a messenger or trickster that moves between worlds. This cultural layer, while less tangible than ecological roles, hints at an older truth. Humans, too, have long recognized the ocelot's presence as essential to the rhythms of the forest. Even today, camera trap footage sparks awe, not because of spectacle, but because of the intimacy of its gaze. Those round, reflective eyes meeting the lens before slipping back into darkness, reminding us how little of its nightly patrol we truly see. In ecological terms, the ocelot is not a star performer like the jaguar, but it is an indispensable player in the ensemble cast. Its hunting regulates prey populations at a scale where imbalance would otherwise ripple rapidly through the system. Its presence forces adaptations in other species, shaping not only numbers but behaviors and even life histories. Its survival, in turn, depends on the continued integrity of the forest, making it both regulator and indicator, a barometer of ecosystem health that reveals how well the lower and middle layers of the web remain intact. To watch an ocelot hunt is to glimpse this equilibrium in motion. A twitch of the ear, a pause so absolute that even the cicadas seem louder for a moment, then the sudden blur of motion as the cat explodes from stillness into decisive action. The prey barely registers the danger before it is over, the forest returning almost instantly to its chorus of background noise. Yet that one kill, invisible to most, resonates across the system. Rodents checked, seeds spared, birds warier, primates shifting their routes. The predator vanishes into the dark, but the consequences of its presence echo on, a silent force that keeps the night in balance. In the grand design of the Amazon, the ocelot may be small compared to its feline cousins, but it fills a role no other predator can match. It is the unseen accountant of abundance, balancing the books of the forest night after night. Its legacy is not written in spectacle, but in the persistence of balance, in the saplings that survive, the birds that adapt, the primates that learn caution, and the endless cycle of life that continues because one small spotted hunter stalks the shadows with patient precision. The rainforest does not sleep when darkness falls. It rearranges itself. The day's birds fold into their roosts, fruit bats scatter in noisy squadrons, and rodents emerge cautiously along the roots and branches that crisscross the forest floor. It is in this blurred seam between canopy and ground where the boa constrictor excels. Neither confined to the trees nor anchored solely to the leaf litter, it inhabits both domains at once. Its heavy body drapes like a living root from a low branch, mottled scales blending seamlessly with bark and shadow. The front coils may hang above a narrow animal trail, the rest trailing down to the soil where unsuspecting mammals pass. This half-arboreal, half-terrestrial stance is the boa's hunting hallmark, a patient ambush that turns vertical structure into a deadly three-dimensional trap. The boa constrictor is not the heaviest snake of the Amazon. That role belongs to the anaconda, but it is among the most versatile. Adults can exceed 4 meters, thick-bodied and muscular, yet far more agile than their aquatic cousin. Unlike the anaconda, which is tied to swamps and floodplains, the boa moves fluidly between habitats, vine tangles, rocky outcrops, dense understory, even agricultural edges where prey remains plentiful. This adaptability makes it one of the most widespread predators in the Americas. But its versatility is more than geography. It extends to its hunting strategy. Where jaguars rely on brute force and pumas on stealthy sprints, the boa uses silence, invisibility, and the coiled potential of its body. Patience is its greatest weapon. A boa may hold position for hours, scarcely breathing, waiting for a night-roaming opossum or kinkajou to venture along a familiar branch. Its head remains perfectly still, yet its perception is active. Along its upper and lower jaws lie specialized heat-sensing pits, structures that register infrared radiation. To the boa, a warm-blooded creature is not simply a silhouette in the dark, but a glowing outline against the cool backdrop of leaves and soil. This thermal vision allows it to strike with uncanny accuracy even in pitch blackness, guided by the gradient of heat as surely as by sight or smell. The strike is sudden, but not reckless. From a coiled launch, the boa propels its head forward with astonishing speed, jaws opening in a hinged gape that seems impossible for its skull size. Backward curving teeth anchor the prey instantly, pulling it close before it can thrash free. The body follows in a fluid wave of motion, coils wrapping around chest and limbs in a sequence both elegant and merciless. Constriction, long misunderstood as suffocation, is in fact more precise and efficient. Studies have shown that boas trigger circulatory arrest, applying pressure that halts blood flow and collapses the prey's ability to oxygenate tissues. Death comes not in minutes of airlessness, but in seconds of cardiac failure, a swift ending that minimizes struggle and risk for the snake. Once subdued, the process of swallowing begins. Flexible ligaments in the jaws stretch wide, each side moving independently in a slow ratcheting motion that pulls the meal inward. Muscles in the throat expand to accommodate prey nearly as wide as the snake itself, ribs opening and contracting in rhythmic waves until the animal vanishes into the boa's body. Digestion is a physiological marathon. Enzymes break down bone and muscle, organs swell to handle the load, and metabolism surges to several times its resting rate. This process generates intense heat, a byproduct so strong that researchers have measured boas raising their body temperature several degrees during digestion, an internal furnace fueled entirely by the act of feeding. When the meal is large, fasting follows. A single peccary piglet or medium-sized bird can sustain a boa for weeks, sometimes months, freeing it from the daily scramble of many predators and allowing it to remain still and hidden for extended periods. This feeding rhythm, long waits, sudden kills, extended fasts, has profound ecological consequences. By targeting mid-sized mammals and birds, boas shape the use of trails and roosting sites. Rodents that survive in one area may find their numbers thinned in another, redistributing pressure on seeds and fruit. Ground-dwelling marsupials become more cautious in certain corridors, forcing them to forage in alternate zones and thereby spreading the impact of their browsing. Birds adjust roosting patterns as well. Species that favor predictable perches suffer higher losses, driving some to rotate sites more frequently or shift higher into the canopy. Even small primates learn avoidance, steering clear of particular trees known to harbor serpents, a pattern that inadvertently gives respite to fruiting branches in those areas. In this way, the boa indirectly influences the dispersal of seeds, the survival of seedlings, and the very architecture of plant communities. The boa's physiology is built for this peculiar lifestyle. Its muscles are not designed for speed over distance, but for sustained, crushing endurance. Its lungs stretch the length of much of its body, enabling gas exchange even while compressed against a meal. The heart itself is unusually mobile, capable of sliding within the thoracic cavity to avoid damage from heavy ingested prey. These internal adaptations reveal the evolutionary trade-offs of a constrictor's life. Slower movement in exchange for near unmatched control over prey once contact is made. Even thermoregulation follows this rhythm. Lacking the constant metabolic heat of mammals, boas use microhabitats to balance temperature, basking at the forest edge after a cool night, retreating into shaded roots during the day, or soaking in shallow pools to avoid overheating during digestion. Each choice reflects a negotiation with the environment, a dialogue of survival carried out in silence. Predators are never without their own risks. Juvenile boas, slender and arboreal, fall prey to raptors, coatis, and even larger snakes. Adults, while formidable, still face threats from jaguars and humans. Yet their survival strategy relies not on confrontation, but on invisibility. Their cryptic coloration, a mosaic of browns and reds, mirrors bark, leaf litter, and shadow so effectively that even trained eyes can miss them at close range. Many encounters occur only when the snake moves, revealing its presence in a sudden ripple of muscle. It is this camouflage that underwrites their ambush success and shields them from becoming prey themselves. In the wider web of rainforest life, the boa constrictor serves as a regulator of the middle tier. It does not dominate apex prey like capybaras or caimans, nor does it specialize in insects or fish. Instead, it steadies the populations that connect plants to higher predators, mid-sized mammals that disperse seeds but can also overbrowse, birds that pollinate yet may overconsume fruit, rodents that proliferate dangerously without restraint. By exerting selective pressure across this middle range, the BOA helps distribute risk and prevent any single group from overwhelming the system. Its ecological role is subtle but indispensable, a reminder that balance is enforced not only by the great predators, but also by those who wait quietly in the margins. To encounter a boa constrictor in the wild is to feel the weight of a presence designed entirely for patience and precision. One moment the branch is bare, the next it is alive, uncoiling with slow inevitability. The strike is sudden, the aftermath prolonged, the impact reverberating far beyond the single life taken. In its silence, the boa enacts governance over the forest's middle ranks, a regulation as vital as the thunder of a jaguar's roar or the shadow of a harpy eagle overhead. Its role is less visible, but no less critical. An ambusher whose coils tighten not only around its prey, but around the hidden balances that allow the rainforest to endure. In the dim understory of the Amazon, where the air hangs heavy with moisture and the ground is a patchwork of fallen leaves, silence is never truly empty. Small mammals scurry in the litter, beetles scrape against bark, and birds shuffle among the shadows. Yet in some places that quiet is different, thicker, weighted with a tension that other creatures seem to sense. This is the realm of the bushmaster, the largest pit viper of the Americas, and one of the most enigmatic predators in the rainforest floor. It does not roam widely like the jaguar or patrol ridges like the puma. Instead, it reigns through absence, creating pockets of territory where prey hesitate, where the very atmosphere feels dangerous. To step here is to risk never stepping again. The bushmaster's strategy begins with invisibility. Its scales, arranged in rough matte patterns of brown and black, dissolve perfectly into the leaf litter. What looks like bark fallen from the canopy or a shadow cast by a rotting branch is in fact a living coil of muscle and venom. Unlike the restless boa, which shifts between branches and soil, the bushmaster can remain nearly motionless for days, even weeks, conserving energy in a low-cost economy. Its ambush relies not on pursuit, but on the patience to let opportunity come to it. In an environment where food is unpredictable and movement burns precious reserves, this strategy is brutally efficient. Embedded along its jaws are heat-sensitive pits tuned to detect infrared radiation with extraordinary sensitivity. A mouse creeping along a route glows against the cooler background, its heartbeat a beacon invisible to most other hunters. The snake's strike is a study in precision, an explosive forward lunge powered by coiled muscles, hinged fangs extending like knives. Venom flows in a controlled pulse, not wasted in excess but injected with mechanical certainty. For the rodent or bird caught in its path, survival is almost non-existent. The hemotoxin spreads swiftly, breaking down tissue, disrupting clotting, and inducing shock. Death comes as much from systemic collapse as from blood loss, leaving the predator free to feed with minimal struggle. Venom is costly to produce, a metabolic investment. Yet the bushmaster has perfected a balance between potency and conservation. It does not strike often, it cannot afford to. Each injection is deliberate, calculated to kill efficiently while preserving reserves for the next encounter. This low-frequency hunting strategy has broader ecological implications. Prey species learn, through instinct, experience, or the consequences observed in others, that certain stretches of forest floor are perilous. These no-go patches become ghost zones in the nightly circuits of rodents and ground-dwelling birds. Seed predation is reduced in these microhabitats, allowing some fruits and seedlings to survive where they might otherwise be consumed in bulk. The snake, by its mere presence, reshapes the mosaic of regeneration across the forest floor. The physiology of the bushmaster mirrors its ecological role. Its body is long and heavy, capable of reaching lengths over 3 meters, yet it is not built for climbing or swimming. Instead, its form is optimized for anchoring against soil, for sudden bursts of power in a single plane of motion. Its scales are keeled, scattering reflected light and further blending its outline with the debris. Internally, the viper's circulatory system supports prolonged stillness. Its metabolism slows to a crawl during fasting, organs down-regulating to conserve energy until the next successful strike. Unlike active hunters, which require frequent meals to sustain movement, the bushmaster can endure long intervals without feeding, its economy of energy as refined as its camouflage. Yet this patience carries risks. Ambush predators live on the knife edge of opportunity. A missed strike, a week of unlucky prey movements, or the intrusion of a competitor can mean starvation. For juveniles, the threat is greater still. Raptors, coatis, and larger snakes readily take them. Even adults must remain wary of jaguars, which, immune to the fear of venom, will crush and consume bushmasters as they do other snakes. To survive, the bushmaster depends on its ability to remain unseen and untouched, a strategy that has succeeded for millennia but demands perfect execution. Beyond the direct predator-prey relationship, the bushmaster's presence reverberates through the system in subtler ways. Rodent populations, curtailed in bushmaster zones, exert less pressure on fallen seeds, giving rise to patches of higher seedling density. Birds that avoid ground-level nesting in snake-rich habitats shift their efforts higher into the understory, altering the distribution of avian predation on insects. Even primates, sensitive to the cues of danger on the forest floor, may reroute foraging paths around known snake microhabitats. What emerges is not a localized effect, but a series of cascading adjustments that ripple through the community. The bushmaster, though unseen and rarely active, engineers change simply by being present. Its venom itself is a marvel of evolutionary refinement. Unlike neurotoxins that paralyze prey instantly, the bushmaster's hemotoxin destabilizes the body from within. Proteins break down blood vessel linings, causing leakage and swelling, while enzymes degrade tissue structure, converting flesh into nutrient-rich slurry. This biochemical strategy serves not only to kill but to pre-digest, ensuring that the snake can absorb maximum energy with minimal digestive effort. For a predator that may wait weeks between meals, efficiency at every stage is paramount. The cultural image of the bushmaster adds yet another layer to its mystique. In local folklore, it is sometimes seen as a guardian of the forest, feared not only for its venom, but for its uncanny invisibility. Hunters tread cautiously where bushmasters are said to dwell, and in many communities, encounters are spoken of in hushed tones, reminders of the rainforest's lethal subtleties. This fear, while born of real danger, may inadvertently protect the snake by discouraging unnecessary human intrusion. Still, habitat loss and hunting have placed pressure on populations in some regions, reminding us that even the most feared predators are vulnerable when the balance of the forest is disrupted. In the taxonomy of Amazonian predators, the bushmaster occupies a unique niche. It is not the apex hunter like the jaguar, nor the bulky constrictor shaping mammal populations with crushing coils. It is the quiet intermediary, the hidden sentinel of the understory, enforcing restraint through silence and threat. Its role underscores an ecological truth. Balance is not maintained solely by visible power, but also by unseen boundaries. by predators whose influence extends beyond the lives they take. To walk through the rainforest and pass unknowingly within a meter of a bushmaster is to experience the paradox of its existence. Rarely observed, rarely photographed, it is nonetheless a defining presence of the Amazon floor. Each coil beneath the leaves represents a pocket of regulation, a silent contract written in venom and patience. For the rodents and birds of the understory, these are the places to avoid, the places where life can end in an instant. For the forest itself, these places are anchors of balance, ensuring that regeneration persists, that no single layer of the system grows unchecked. The bushmaster does not need to move to shape its world. It waits, and in waiting, it rules. In the filtered half-light of the rainforest floor, where shadows scatter across damp leaves and roots glisten with condensation, tiny bursts of color punctuate the green-brown monotony. A flash of cobalt blue, a smear of brilliant yellow, a body no larger than a thumbnail pulsing with defiance against the camouflage-driven palette of the forest. These are poison dart frogs, creatures that defy the logic of invisibility by choosing spectacle as survival. In a landscape where blending in is often the rule of life and death, they advertise themselves boldly, their skins saturated with pigments that seem almost artificial. Yet this brilliance is not vanity, it is a message. To predators, to rivals, to the ecosystem itself, approach at your peril. The warning is not empty. Beneath the glistening skin lies a chemical arsenal of alkaloid toxins, some of the most potent natural defenses known. Yet the frogs themselves are not born poisonous. Their chemistry is borrowed, accumulated from the tiny arthropods they consume, ants, mites and beetles whose own diets of plants and microbes provide the alkaloid base. The frog, in essence, is a living alchemist, refining this molecular inheritance into skin-bound compounds that disable nerves, paralyze muscles, and in sufficient doses can kill predators many times larger than the frog itself. Each species is defined by a distinct cocktail of toxins, shaped by both diet and evolutionary lineage, meaning that the warning colors are not merely generic, they are finely tuned signals honed over millennia of predator-prey negotiation. Aposematism, the use of conspicuous signals to advertise danger, is a language of the forest, one as sophisticated as birdsong or pheromone trails. Predators learn quickly. The frog's vivid colors are paired with the bitter taste or debilitating effects of its toxin, encoding a memory that is rarely forgotten. In some cases, even naive predators, having never encountered such a frog, hesitate instinctively. This suggests that aposematism exploits deep cognitive biases, the association of brightness with risk. The forest, in turn, reads these signs. Where dart frogs are numerous, predation pressure shifts. Insectivorous birds, snakes and mammals avoid these brightly marked patches of the leaf litter, hunting instead where the camouflage of prey promises safety without punishment. The presence of frogs thus alters the flow of predation itself, carving out microhabitats where risk is redistributed by the currency of chemical defense. Yet poison dart frogs are not merely static warnings, they are active participants in the dynamics of rainforest life. Their reproductive strategies are among the most complex and intimate of any amphibian. After courtship, small tremors of vibration and soft calls barely audible in the cacophony of the forest, eggs are laid in moist leaf litter. Here, parental care, rare among amphibians, becomes essential. The male or female, depending on species, guards the clutch from desiccation and predation. When the eggs hatch, the adult transports tadpoles one by one, adhering them to its back with mucus and carrying them vertically into the canopy. There, in the hidden reservoirs of water trapped in bromeliad tanks or leaf axils, the tadpoles are deposited into phytotelmata, tiny aquatic worlds suspended above the forest floor. Each tadpole becomes the occupant of its own microcosm, fed and maintained by parental visits. In some species, mothers lay unfertilized eggs directly into these pools as food, a form of parental provisioning rare in amphibians but vital for survival. This extraordinary investment ensures that offspring mature in relative safety, away from the gauntlet of predators and parasites that dominate the ground. Yet it also ties the frog's life cycle directly to the integrity of the rainforest architecture. Without bromeliads, without the structural diversity of a healthy canopy, these strategies collapse. Thus, the frogs serve as bioindicators. Their presence signals not just a functioning amphibian population, but the survival of the microhabitats and microclimates that sustain the rainforest as a whole. Their physiology reflects this precarious balance. Dart frogs have permeable skin designed for gas exchange and water balance, making them exquisitely sensitive to changes in humidity, temperature, and chemical pollution. A slight shift in microclimate can dry them, disrupt breeding, or compromise toxin acquisition. Their decline in fragmented or polluted habitats is often one of the earliest warning signs that the rainforest's intricate system is unraveling. In this sense, they are not only participants, but sentinels, tiny bodies broadcasting the state of their environment with far more accuracy than any instrument could. Predator-prey dynamics around dart frogs are equally fascinating. While most predators avoid them, some have adapted strategies to bypass their defenses. Certain snakes, such as the Limatophis species, are resistant to their toxins and can consume them with impunity. This predator-prey arms race illustrates the evolutionary push and pull that defines rainforest life. The frog escalates its chemical potency. The predator evolves biochemical resistance, and both spiral into an adaptive contest with no permanent winner. Such interactions ripple outward, shaping not just the species themselves, but the ecosystems they inhabit. The diversity of poison dart frogs is itself a reflection of ecological gradients. From the lowland floodplains to montane forests, species vary in size, coloration, and toxin composition. Some display cryptic phases as juveniles before acquiring the bright warning colors of adulthood, a transformation that mirrors the shift from vulnerability to chemical defense. Others exhibit polymorphism within the same population, with multiple color morphs coexisting. This bewildering variation challenges simple explanations and suggests a complex interplay of sexual selection, predator learning, and environmental pressures. It also means that the forest is full of micro-narratives. Each frog's skin is not only a shield, but a story of its particular lineage, diet, and habitat. Yet for all their toxicity, dart frogs embody paradox. They are fragile as well as fearsome, dependent on stability, yet resilient through strategy. Their survival depends less on brute force than on communication, the clarity of their colors, the success of their signals, the reliability of their environment. They are, in many ways, communicators of ecological truth. When their populations thrive, it signals that the forest's leaf litter is intact, its canopy reservoirs are functioning, and its insect populations remain balanced. When they vanish, it is a sign that something deeper has gone wrong, whether climate disruption, chemical pollution, or habitat loss. To watch one in the wild is to experience the rainforest on an intimate scale. A finger-sized frog perches on a slick green leaf, its body glowing with colors that seem borrowed from a painter's palette. Its movements are precise, deliberate, yet unhurried, as if fully confident that its message has been received. Around it, life adjusts. Ants change their foraging lines, birds redirect their hunting sweeps, and seeds in the litter below face altered odds of survival. This tiny amphibian, fragile yet formidable, is both participant and orchestrator of its environment, a node through which ecological threads pass and are rewoven. In the grand symphony of Amazon life, poison dart frogs are not the loudest players. They do not roar like jaguars, crash like capybaras, or tower like saber trees. But in their colors and their chemistry, they embody a principle that defines the rainforest itself. Survival through signal, power through communication, resilience through interdependence. Their brilliance is not decoration, it is the language of life asserting itself in the face of danger, a warning written on skin that the forest has learned to read and obey. When darkness settles over the rainforest and the great diurnal actors retreat into silence, another pulse begins to flow across the forest floor. A dim procession, endless in its persistence, stretches like a living vein over roots and along fallen logs. Tiny fragments of green sway above the ground, as if leaves themselves had risen up and begun to walk. These are the night convoys of the leafcutter ants, among the most remarkable farmers on earth, engineers of soil and sunlight, their collective will reshaping the forest in ways as profound as any jaguar's hunt or anaconda's coil. Each ant, viewed in isolation, is no more than a speck of motion, jaws clamped around a triangular shard of leaf, body trembling with the strain of cargo several times its own weight. But together they form a highway, lanes of outbound cutters returning with fresh vegetation and inbound workers streaming unburdened to climb again. The path is alive with order, a choreography invisible to human eyes, but deeply etched in pheromonal trails and instinctive rules of traffic. Their movement continues without pause, day after day, week after week, until entire sections of canopy bear the signature of their harvest. What they carry, however, is not food in any direct sense. No leaf ever touches their mandibles as sustenance. Instead, these harvests are offerings to another kingdom of life, fungi. Within subterranean chambers, the ants cultivate elaborate fungal gardens, feeding their symbionts with chewed leaf pulp, carefully moistened and weeded of contaminants. This agricultural partnership has persisted for millions of years, a lineage of cultivation that long predates human farming. The fungus, in turn, produces nutrient-rich structures that the ants alone can consume, binding both species into a dependency so complete that neither could survive without the other. The ants have domesticated their crop, pruning it, defending it from invasive molds, even secreting antibiotic substances from their bodies to sterilize the gardens. In miniature, this is civilization, not the civilization of cities and machines, but of soil, spores, and collective will. The colony itself is an empire measured in castes and labors. At the entrance, hulking soldier ants stand guard, their jaws sharp enough to pierce skin, ready to repel predatory intruders such as anteaters, beetles, or rival colonies. Deeper inside, smaller workers tend to the gardens, cutting away diseased patches, grooming the fungus, and carrying waste to dedicated refuse chambers. The division of labor is not imposed but emergent, written in the size and instincts of each individual. Some ants live their entire lives in darkness, never once glimpsing the outside world, yet their hidden toil underpins the productivity of the whole. The society functions as a single organism stretched across tens of thousands of bodies, each expendable, yet all essential. The refuse chambers themselves are another story of transformation. Into these subterranean dumps flow discarded leaves, spent fungal tissue, and the corpses of workers who have fulfilled their purpose. To human eyes it may seem nothing but rot, yet this decay is a crucible of fertility. Nutrients liberated in the waste piles seep into the soil, enriching the ground around the colony. Studies have shown that leafcutter middens act like natural compost heaps, hotspots of microbial activity that fertilize the forest and alter its chemistry. Plants growing near colonies often benefit from the heightened fertility, while the ants' selective pruning opens gaps in the canopy that allow sunlight to pierce into the understory. In this way, the ants, through a cascade of unintended consequences, engineer light, soil, and growth, acting as unseen foresters in the Amazon's perpetual cycle of renewal. Their pruning patterns reveal a remarkable ecological awareness. Leafcutters do not harvest indiscriminately. They target specific species, often selecting younger leaves rich in nutrients but less burdened by defensive compounds. The result is an uneven mosaic of plant competition, some species suppressed, others given reprieve. By redirecting energy away from dominant trees and shrubs, the ants foster diversity, ensuring that no single plant monopolizes the canopy. This constant turnover feeds into the broader cycle of succession, where light gaps allow fast-growing pioneers to surge, only to be checked again by the ants' scissors. It is a rhythm of disturbance and regrowth that maintains the rainforest's complexity. The scale of this activity is staggering. Colonies may number in the millions, and a mature nest can move hundreds of kilograms of plant material each year. This biomass, funneled through fungal metabolism and soil enrichment, becomes a critical engine of nutrient cycling. Unlike large herbivores that browse sporadically, ants provide continuous pressure, redistributing energy across trophic levels with metronomic precision. Their work links canopy to soil, plant to fungus, decomposition to fertility. To speak of rainforest productivity without including leafcutters is to miss one of the central motors of the system. Yet their dominance is not unchallenged. Armies of phorid flies, parasitoids, evolved specifically to exploit the ants, hover over the foraging lines. They dart down to lay eggs on exposed workers, the larvae consuming the ants from within. To counter this, colonies deploy decoy workers, tiny guardians that ride atop leaf fragments, scanning the air for incoming flies and lunging at them with open jaws. The battle plays out nightly, a microcosm of predator-prey escalation. Even anteaters with their long tongues and claws threaten colonies, tearing open nests to gorge on the swarms within. But the ants persist, their resilience lying not in individual strength but in overwhelming numbers, a constant tide that no predator can fully suppress. Thermal regulation also shapes their activity. In the heat of midday, trails often fall silent, workers retreating underground to avoid desiccation. By dusk, as humidity rises and temperatures ease, the convoys resume, the forest once more filled with the rustle of leaves in motion. This rhythm of retreat and advance ensures that the colony's foraging is aligned not just with plant availability, but with the delicate microclimate of the Amazon floor. Timing is everything. Efficiency is survival. For the observer, the sight of a leafcutter trail is one of the most evocative spectacles of the forest. To follow it is to trace the invisible arteries of the ecosystem. One can walk for dozens of meters along a path so well worn that it cuts grooves into the soil, bordered by guard posts and maintained with the regularity of highways. The ants themselves appear tireless, carrying their green flags into the night, each oblivious to the scale of the enterprise they serve. Yet collectively, their actions echo far beyond their size, shaping the structure of the forest itself. It is tempting to see intelligence in their order, a plan behind the endless procession. But the genius of the leafcutter colony lies not in central command, but in emergent design. Each ant follows simple cues, and out of these arises complexity that no single individual could comprehend. This is not chaos, but a different kind of governance, one rooted in the mathematics of collective behavior and the deep time of coevolution with plants, fungi, and soil microbes. Their success is proof that the rainforest is managed not only by its apex predators and towering trees, but also by the smallest engineers, whose contributions accumulate invisibly, grain by grain, bite by bite. In the grand balance of the Amazon, the leafcutter ants are less dramatic than the jaguar or the anaconda, yet their influence is arguably greater. They are the perpetual farmers of the forest, harvesting, cultivating, fertilizing, and pruning in cycles that run without pause. Their colonies may rise and fall, but the soil remembers, enriched and transformed by their presence. Every leaf they cut, every fragment they carry, is a transaction in the economy of the rainforest, one that has sustained this biome for millions of years. To watch them is to witness agriculture stripped to its essence, the conversion of raw material into sustenance through partnership with another life form. It is a reminder that farming did not begin with humans in fields, but with insects in soil, that civilization has more than one face, and that the Amazon's fertility is built not only by towering trees and raging rivers, but by the endless march of tiny farmers, each carrying a leaf that feeds the forest itself. In the heat of the Amazonian day, when the canopy seals in humidity and the forest floor steams under the weight of its own respiration, a quiet architecture rises from the soil. At first glance, these structures appear to be no more than earthen lumps or ancient roots long since turned to clay. But each mound is alive, a citadel of engineers whose influence extends far beyond their tiny bodies. These are the termites, architects of the hidden world, creatures whose collective labor reshapes soils, stores moisture, and supports entire communities of plants and animals. The mound itself is a masterpiece of natural engineering. Constructed grain by grain, each particle of earth is cemented by saliva and molded into intricate buttresses and tunnels. Inside lies a labyrinth of chambers and passageways, galleries so finely tuned that they function as lungs. Through these airways, convection currents circulate, balancing temperature and humidity even under the extremes of dry season heat or torrential rains. It is a living climate regulator, one that allows termites to thrive where few other insects could maintain stability. The mound's surface may seem dry and brittle, but within it lies a carefully curated atmosphere, calibrated by millions of years of evolutionary trial and error. Termites themselves are not consumers of wood in the way popular imagination often suggests. They are instead facilitators, alchemists of cellulose. Their diets consist of plant litter, dead wood, and grasses, materials otherwise indigestible to most animals. The secret lies in their gut symbionts, dense microbial communities of bacteria and protozoa that break down cellulose into simple sugars. Each termite is, in effect, a walking bioreactor, its internal symbionts doing what even fire cannot always achieve, unlocking the energy bound tightly in plant cell walls. This partnership, honed across evolutionary time, allows termites to channel otherwise inaccessible biomass back into the ecosystem, keeping nutrients in circulation and preventing the forest from choking on its own debris. Their influence extends far beyond decomposition. By constantly tunneling and carrying soil upward, termites aerate and fertilize the ground. Mineral layers locked deep below are transported toward the surface, enriching topsoil that would otherwise be quickly leached by rainfall. In regions where termites are abundant, the soil is looser, more fertile, and more capable of absorbing and holding water. Their structures create micro-oases in the forest matrix, pockets of higher productivity where seeds germinate more readily, roots penetrate deeper, and plants grow more vigorously. Around termite mounds, grasses remain greener for longer in the dry season, and saplings survive droughts that kill their neighbors. In this way, termites function as ecosystem stabilizers, buffering local communities against climatic extremes. The water cycle itself is not immune to their influence. Deep within their mounds, termites maintain reservoirs of moisture, stored and regulated by the porous structure of the soil. During dry months, when the forest floor cracks and rivers shrink back into their channels, these hidden banks of humidity radiate outward. Small reptiles retreat to mound crevices to escape desiccation. Spiders and scorpions hunt along the cool exterior walls. Even amphibians take shelter in the moistened soils beneath the base. These structures thus become seasonal refuges, micro-habitats that sustain biodiversity through the most difficult stretches of the year. The termite colonies themselves are as complex as any social system in the Amazon. Castes divide labor with an efficiency that rivals ant colonies. Workers forage and build, their jaws worn down from constant cutting. Soldiers, with oversized mandibles or chemical sprays, defend the nest from predators such as anteaters, armadillos, or marauding ants. At the center, hidden in the deepest chambers, resides the queen, an elongated, egg-laying body that produces offspring by the thousands. Her lifespan may stretch decades, far longer than the workers who tend her, making her one of the most enduring individual organisms in the rainforest. This structure, this specialization, is what allows termite societies to persist through generations, each mound outlasting the lives of its builders and serving as a legacy of collective endurance. But termites are not invincible. Anteaters, with tongues up to 60 centimeters long and coated in sticky saliva, specialize in breaching their defenses. A single anteater can consume tens of thousands of termites in one feeding, yet even this pressure rarely collapses a colony. The numbers are simply too great, the construction too resilient. Similarly, armies of predatory ants may overwhelm workers along foraging trails, but the mound remains sealed and defended. In this balance lies a deeper truth. Termites, though small and vulnerable, survive through scale and persistence, their collective presence too vast to erase. The ecological implications of their labor ripple outward. By pruning vegetation indirectly through decomposition, they accelerate nutrient turnover, feeding microbes, fungi, and plants. Their soil engineering shifts competitive balances among plants, favoring those that can exploit the enriched patches around mounds. Even animal communities are shaped by their architecture. Lizards bask atop warm mound surfaces in the morning, burrowing owls nest in the abandoned structures, peccaries dig at their bases for minerals. Each mound becomes a hub, a small ecosystem within the larger rainforest, radiating influence across multiple trophic levels. From a wider perspective, termites help stitch together the rainforest's resilience against climate change. By stabilizing soil moisture, by recycling nutrients continuously, by creating refuges in dry spells, they serve as guardians of continuity. Without them, vast areas of the Amazon would lose fertility more quickly, plants would struggle to regenerate, and local droughts would bite harder. Their role is less dramatic than that of jaguars or anacondas, but it is every bit as critical. Where predators regulate prey, termites regulate the ground itself, ensuring that the living stage remains fertile for the dramas above. Culturally and scientifically, they invite both awe and unease. For farmers at forest edges, termites can appear as pests, consuming wooden structures and crops. Yet within the rainforest, they are neither villains nor intruders, but foundational engineers, creatures that hold together the very soil beneath our feet. Biologists studying them have uncovered insights into soil ecology, symbiotic evolution, and even sustainable engineering, lessons in ventilation and water management that human architects have borrowed for their own designs. The termites, in their quiet persistence, reveal strategies that far outstrip our own ingenuity in durability and efficiency. To stand before a termite mound in the Amazon is to confront the scale of what small bodies can accomplish together. The structure towers above the undergrowth, a fortress built without blueprints, guided only by chemical signals and collective instinct. It breathes, it regulates, it shelters, it endures. Within it, millions of individuals labor without rest, their lives measured in days or months, yet their society lasting decades. Around it, plants flourish, animals shelter, soils thrive. It is not merely a home, but a keystone of the forest, a monument to the power of cooperation in the smallest of creatures. In the grand architecture of the Amazon, termites are the quiet masons, the unseen engineers whose work sustains the visible abundance. Their mounds dot the landscape like punctuation marks, each one a reminder that beneath the spectacle of jaguars and macaws lies a subtler foundation of life. Without termites, the soil would suffocate, the plants would falter, and the rainforest's great symphony would lose its rhythm. Through their endless tunneling, their hidden galleries, and their partnership with microscopic allies, they ensure that the forest breathes, grows, and endures. The rainforest night is thick with sound, the hum of insects, the distant calls of frogs, the muffled rush of a stream swollen from the day's rains. Through this chorus, another presence moves with deliberate weight. Branches bend softly, roots are pressed down by broad hooves, and then, with a low splash, the tapir enters the water. Its silhouette is cumbersome, barrel-bodied and thick-necked, with a short prehensile trunk flexing as it probes the air. Yet the tapir is more than a lumbering shadow of the undergrowth. It is a gardener of the Amazon, an unwitting architect of regeneration, dispersing seeds across landscapes and opening the very corridors through which life flows. Few animals carry the quiet authority of the tapir. It is among the largest terrestrial mammals in South America, weighing several hundred kilograms, yet it passes through the forest with an understated presence. Unlike the jaguar or the harpy eagle, its power lies not in predation, but in persistence. Each night, it roams in search of fruit, leaves, and tender shoots, consuming enormous quantities of plant matter. What it digests is transformed not only into sustenance for its body, but into a future for the forest. Seeds swallowed along the way endure the long journey through its digestive tract, scarified and primed for germination. Hours later, they emerge intact, deposited in nutrient-rich dung piles, far from the parent tree. In this way, the tapir acts as a conveyor of diversity, moving genetic material across the patchwork of the rainforest. This role becomes most vital in disturbed habitats, where storms topple trees, where rivers change course, or where human incursions leave gaps. The tapir arrives not as an intentional planter, but as a natural vector of recolonization. Seeds too large for most birds or bats to carry, giant palm nuts, thick-shelled legumes, find their second chance in the tapir's journeys. Many of these seeds would otherwise fall beneath their parents' canopy, competing in vain against dense shade and sibling crowding. But by moving them into light gaps, the tapir ensures survival, giving rise to stands of vegetation that renew the forest structure. It is no exaggeration to call them gardeners, for without their service, the architecture of the Amazon would tilt, favoring smaller seeded species at the expense of giants. The trails cut by tapirs are as consequential as the seeds they spread. Their bulk and habit of walking repeatedly along the same routes carve corridors through the undergrowth. These paths, pressed flat by their hooves, are quickly adopted by other species. Peccaries, armadillos, and even predators like jaguars follow the same tracks, saving energy by walking where vegetation is already cleared. Birds forage along their edges, and small mammals use them as navigational lines through otherwise dense thickets. Over time, the forest floor becomes etched with these silent highways, networks of passageways that structure animal movement at a landscape scale. What begins as a single mammal's nightly commute becomes a shared infrastructure of mobility. The tapir's physiology equips it for this unique role. Its flexible trunk, a fusion of elongated upper lip and nose, acts as a grasping tool, curling around leaves or fruits just out of reach. In rivers, it becomes a snorkel, allowing the tapir to submerge almost fully while still breathing, an adaptation that keeps it hidden from predators or insects during crossings. Its digestive system is long and complex, designed to extract nutrients from fibrous vegetation while still permitting large seeds to pass unharmed. This dual function, feeding the animal while preserving plant potential, illustrates the fine balance evolution has struck between herbivore and forest. Predation has shaped the tapir's behavior as well. Though massive, it is not invulnerable. Jaguars stalk them along riverbanks, ambushing as they emerge from water. Pumas, too, may target juveniles. To evade these threats, tapirs rely on stealth and memory rather than speed. They move cautiously, pausing often to scent the air with their mobile snouts. Their nocturnal habits are both a defense against heat and a strategy to avoid predators more active during the day. When threatened, they retreat to rivers, where their bulk transforms into surprising grace. In water, they can slip silently beneath the surface, re-emerging dozens of meters away, their trunk breaking the waterline like a periscope. Such escapes are rarely witnessed, but testify to an animal far more versatile than its appearance suggests. The ecological role of tapirs extends into nutrient cycling. Their dung is not just a carrier for seeds, but a resource in itself. Insects, from dung beetles to flies, swarm to it, breaking down matter and recycling minerals into the soil. Some beetles bury seeds from the dung, adding another layer of dispersal and protection from predation. In this chain of interactions, the tapir becomes the starting point of a cascade. Its feeding fuels its own body, its waste sustains insects, those insects feed birds and small mammals, and the seeds buried in the process grow into trees that restart the cycle. The tapir is also a living archive of the forest's past. Fossil records show that their lineage stretches back tens of millions of years, with ancestors once roaming across North and South America. They survived the Pleistocene extinctions that eliminated many other large herbivores, leaving them as some of the last representatives of an ancient guild. Their survival has left the Amazon with one of its few remaining megafaunal seed dispersers, a link to an era when giant ground sloths and gomphotheres shaped vegetation dynamics. The forest as it exists today is, in part, a product of their persistence. Yet their future is precarious. Hunting and habitat loss have reduced populations across much of their range. In some fragmented landscapes, the disappearance of tapirs has been followed by a noticeable decline in large seeded trees, their absence echoing through forest regeneration. This phenomenon, known as defaunation, transforms not just species lists but ecosystem processes. Forests without tapirs grow denser with smaller trees, less diverse in architecture and less capable of storing carbon. The gardener's silence leaves an imprint visible not just in local clearings but in the very climate-regulating functions of the Amazon. Culturally, tapirs carry an ambiguous place in human perception. To indigenous communities, they are both game and totem, symbols of fertility and endurance. Their shy demeanor and nocturnal habits make them elusive to most, yet their trails are known, their footprints recognized as signs of abundance. In folklore, their flexible snouts and reclusive lives invite myth, sometimes casting them as tricksters or forest spirits. These narratives, while varied, all converge on one truth. The tapir is inseparable from the forest's identity, its presence a reassurance that the ecosystem is whole. To watch a tapir cross a river at night is to see the quiet work of the forest embodied. The water parts gently around its body, droplets sliding down its hide as it steps onto the far bank. Behind it lies a trail carved through ferns and saplings, seeds waiting in its gut to be deposited hours later in some patch of disturbed ground. The act is unremarkable in the moment, yet its consequences ripple outward through decades of growth. Trees will sprout where the dung falls, insects will feed, birds will nest, and the cycle of renewal will continue. In its slow, deliberate way, the tapir writes the forest's future, one seed at a time. In the grand hierarchy of the Amazon, the tapir is not a predator or a showpiece of power. It is a gardener, a quiet force of continuity whose importance lies not in spectacle but in process. By dispersing seeds, cutting trails, and fertilizing soil, it ensures that diversity is maintained, that light gaps are filled, and that regeneration keeps pace with disturbance. It is a reminder that the health of the rainforest depends not only on its hunters and giants, but also on its gardeners, creatures whose silent labor keeps the system in motion, carrying the promise of tomorrow within their own bodies. The forest floor trembles with their passing long before a human eye can see them. A low chorus of grunts and squeals rolls through the undergrowth, leaves quiver and stems crack under blunt snouts rooting in the soil. Then the herd arrives, peccaries, dozens strong, sometimes hundreds, moving like a tide of bristled backs and restless hooves. To encounter them is to witness a living disturbance front, a mobile force that reshapes the ground it crosses. They are not delicate feeders. They are diggers, churners, and uprooters, the groundskeepers of the rainforest, whose every movement leaves behind a wake of ecological consequences. Where jaguars stalk from shadows and tapirs disperse seeds with patient travel, peccaries act through chaos. Their feeding is uproarious and physical. With blunt heads lowered, they drive snouts beneath the leaf litter, wrenching seedlings from their holdfasts, exposing roots and overturning soil. They snap fallen fruit with cracking jaws, strip husks from palm nuts, and scrape bark from stems. In their wake, the forest looks briefly ravaged. Saplings toppled, earth churned, litter scattered. But this disruption is no accident. It is a cycle of renewal, a disturbance that resets plant mosaics and prevents stagnation. By toppling some plants, they create openings for others. By disturbing the litter, they uncover seeds hidden beneath, exposing them to birds and rodents that would otherwise never find them. In this way, peccaries orchestrate the balance of growth and decay, ensuring that the forest never ossifies into sameness. Waterholes and wallows tell another part of their story. Peccaries gather in numbers to dig shallow depressions in damp soil, rolling and trampling until the ground turns to mud. These wallows are more than indulgence. They are essential for thermoregulation, providing relief in the sweltering humidity of the day. Their thick hides, overlaid with stiff bristles, do little to shed heat, and the wallows cool their bodies while smothering parasites in coats of mud. Yet these features become more than just peccary baths. Once abandoned, wallows fill with rainwater, attracting frogs, insects, and small reptiles. Birds descend to bathe, and predators patrol the edges, aware that prey is drawn to these temporary oases. What begins as a herd's moment of comfort becomes a hotspot of biodiversity, an ecological node where species converge. Predators follow the herds with keen interest. Jaguars and pumas shadow them, waiting for stragglers or moments of panic when the group splinters. A peccary herd in alarm is formidable. Their numbers provide defense, and their tusks, sharpened by constant wear against each other, can inflict deep wounds. When threatened, they clump together, grunting and charging in bursts, a wall of bristles and aggression that few predators take lightly. Yet individuals fall, and their vulnerability creates moving hotspots of predator activity. Camera traps have captured jaguars trailing herds across kilometers, their hunting strategy tied directly to peccary movements. This relationship is cyclical. As predators key in on them, peccaries themselves alter their paths and timings, scattering disturbance across new swaths of forest. The physiology of peccaries reflects their rugged lifestyle. Their digestive systems are adapted to a broad, fibrous diet, capable of handling not only fruits and seeds, but also roots, tubers, and coarse vegetation that many other herbivores ignore. In contrast to ruminants with complex stomachs, peccaries rely on microbial fermentation within an enlarged stomach chamber, extracting nutrients from cellulose-rich material. This digestive efficiency allows them to process vast amounts of biomass, returning it to the forest in the form of dung rich in partially digested seeds. Many of these seeds remain viable, scattered along trails in fertilized deposits. Thus, peccaries play a dual role: destroyers of seedlings in one place, dispersers of potential forest in another. The herd structure itself amplifies their impact. Social bonds keep them moving as a unit, their collective pressure magnifying the disturbance they create. A solitary peccary is a minor event, but a herd of 100 is a rolling storm, transforming everything it passes. Their movement cuts trails through dense vegetation, corridors that other animals quickly adopt. These paths, pressed flat by hooves, allow armadillos, agoutis, and even predators easier passage. In this way, peccaries leave behind infrastructure as well as disturbance, carving the forest into a network of accessibility that shapes the movement of countless species. Peccaries are not immune to vulnerability. Their herds, though formidable, are susceptible to disease outbreaks, often transmitted by contact with domestic livestock at forest edges. Such epidemics can decimate populations, leading to ecological ripple effects. Without peccary herds, seed predation patterns shift, wallows vanish, and predators lose a key food source. Studies have documented areas where local extinctions of peccaries led to declines in jaguar populations, as well as changes in forest composition driven by unchecked seedling survival. The loss of disturbance, it turns out, is as destabilizing as the loss of a predator. The forest requires both pressure and release, both destruction and dispersal, to maintain its dynamic equilibrium. Their evolutionary history links them to an ancient lineage. Peccaries resemble pigs, but diverged millions of years ago, evolving independently in the Americas. Unlike true pigs, they have specialized scent glands on their backs, used to mark territory and reinforce social bonds within herds. These glands leave musky traces along trails and wallows, a chemical presence that other peccaries recognize and follow. This constant communication ensures cohesion, allowing herds to function as collective organisms moving in concert. To other forest inhabitants, these scents are signals as well, warnings of disturbance to come or opportunities to exploit in the wake of foraging. Birds are among the most attentive followers. As peccaries churn the leaf litter, insects scatter upward and birds swoop in to seize the opportunity. This commensal relationship benefits the birds without affecting the peccaries, a reminder that even chaotic disturbance creates niches for others. Rodents too benefit from exposed seeds left behind, while amphibians make use of churned soil around wallows. Each interaction underscores a central truth. The peccary's role is not confined to what it eats, but radiates outward through everything it disrupts. To watch a herd pass is to see the forest remade in miniature. Trails widen, seedlings vanish, fruit husks are crushed underfoot. Hours later, the space fills again with birds, insects, and scavengers drawn to the aftermath. Days later, seedlings sprout in the churned soil, some from seeds the herd dispersed in dung, others from seeds newly exposed to light. Months later, predators still trace the herd's path, hunting along the trails etched into the ground. Each layer of time reveals another echo of their influence, an extended legacy born of simple collective foraging. In the grand narrative of the Amazon, peccaries embody the principle that disturbance is not destruction, but renewal. They are not gardeners in the deliberate sense of tapirs, nor silent regulators like boas or bushmasters. They are custodians of chaos, keeping the forest in motion, ensuring that no patch grows too stable, no canopy too closed, no understory too settled. By uprooting, by wallowing, by trampling, they maintain the forest's ability to reset itself, to remain dynamic in the face of change. To encounter them is to experience the forest as flux, a system perpetually unmade and remade by the hooves of its groundskeepers. In their noisy herds lies an overlooked power, the ability to sustain diversity not through careful tending but through disturbance, an engine of renewal that keeps the Amazon alive. The rainforest after dusk becomes a different world. The diurnal chorus fades into silence, and in its place rises a new tempo, a softer hum, the flutter of wings almost too fast for the ear to catch, and the faint brush of air as shapes pass overhead. This is the hour of the bats, the most numerous of the forest's mammals, and yet the least seen. They emerge in waves from hollow trees, cave mouths and crevices hidden in the canopy, dispersing into the darkness with a purpose as ancient as the forest itself. Their lives are written not in spectacle, but in ceaseless service, pollinating, dispersing, and regulating. In their absence, the Amazon would quickly lose much of its rhythm, for they are not merely inhabitants of the night. They are its gardeners, its couriers, and its insect wardens. Among the most striking roles bats play is as pollinators of night-blooming plants. Many tropical flowers open only in darkness, their corollas long and pale, their scents drifting through the humid air. These blossoms are not designed for birds or bees. They are shaped for high-speed visits from bats. Nectar-feeding species, equipped with elongated snouts and brush-tipped tongues, approach with precision, hovering briefly before plunging into the bloom. Pollen clings to their fur, dusting their heads and shoulders as they drink deeply before darting away to the next flower. The exchange is swift, lasting only seconds, yet its consequences are enduring. Entire plant lineages, cacti, kapok trees, and countless understory shrubs depend on bats for fertilization. Without their nightly service, these species would falter, and the intricate web of forest life that depends on their fruit would unravel. Equally important is their role in seed dispersal. Fruit-eating bats pluck ripe figs, guavas, and countless other offerings, carrying them to feeding roosts where they devour the pulp and drop the seeds. Many of these seeds, too small or light for birds to transport effectively, are spread far from the parent tree. Others pass through the digestive tract, emerging in dung as part of a seed rain that falls across clearings, riverbanks, and secondary growth. This rain of propagules is vital for forest regeneration, bridging gaps where trees have fallen or where human disturbance has scarred the canopy. In places too open for shade-loving seedlings to survive, the seeds carried by bats provide the pioneers that stabilize the soil and draw other life back into the system. In this way, bats serve as the agents of renewal, extending the reach of trees beyond the limits of their own dispersal. But not all bats live on nectar and fruit. The insectivorous guilds, by far the most numerous, carry out a quieter yet equally critical service. Emerging by the thousands, they sweep the night skies with echolocation, emitting ultrasonic calls that bounce invisibly against moths, beetles, and mosquitoes. Each bat may consume its body weight in insects in a single night, suppressing populations that would otherwise surge unchecked. For the rainforest, this predation has cascading benefits. Many night-flying insects feed on tender young leaves, and their outbreaks can strip trees bare. By keeping these populations in check, bats indirectly protect the forest's growth, reducing pulses of herbivory that would otherwise ripple across seedlings and saplings. The forest's capacity to sustain its green mantle owes much to this nightly patrol. The sensory adaptations that make this possible are among the marvels of evolution. Echolocation is more than simple sonar. It is a dynamic, adaptive system. Bats alter the frequency, intensity, and repetition of their calls depending on context, emitting wide-beam, low-frequency sweeps to scan large areas, then narrowing their signals to hone in on a specific insect as they close the gap. Some moths have evolved ears tuned to these calls, detecting danger in time to take evasive action. In turn, certain bats switch to whispering frequencies, slipping past detection to catch their quarry. This arms race plays out silently above the forest, a continual cycle of adaptation and counter-adaptation that underscores how predator-prey dynamics sculpt sensory evolution as profoundly as they shape bodies. The energy economy of bats is equally striking. Powered flight demands enormous metabolic output, and nectarivores in particular must balance the caloric gains of each flower against the cost of hovering to drink. To cope, their bodies operate at metabolic rates among the highest of any mammal, supported by efficient respiratory systems and oxygen-rich blood. They live in a perpetual state of high turnover, burning through energy and replenishing it within hours. Yet this fragility at the individual level becomes resilience at the ecosystem level, for their ceaseless demand for food drives the dispersal and pollination upon which the forest depends. Predators too are woven into this story. Owls swoop through the night to seize bats in flight, while snakes and carnivorous mammals stake out roosts, ambushing them as they return at dawn. This predation exerts its own pressure, shaping roosting choices and colony behaviors. Many bats choose to roost in inaccessible crevices or in the clustered protection of caves where sheer numbers overwhelm predators' ability to consume more than a fraction. Others shift roosts frequently, trading stability for safety. These decisions echo outward. The choice of roost influences nutrient deposition through guano, which in turn fertilizes plants and sustains cave-dwelling invertebrates. Even in their vulnerability, bats distribute resources that ripple through the food web. At the landscape scale, their importance is magnified by their mobility. Unlike rodents or primates, bats are not confined by rivers or fragmented patches of forest. They can cross open areas with ease, carrying seeds across landscapes fractured by human activity. This ability makes them essential agents of connectivity, linking isolated fragments of forest with a flow of genetic material. In regions where deforestation has left scarred mosaics of farmland and secondary growth, bats may be the only animals consistently bridging the gaps, ensuring that regeneration is not confined to small pockets but spreads outward. Their history stretches back millions of years, with fossil evidence showing that bats have coexisted with flowering plants since the early diversification of angiosperms. Their evolutionary partnership is written in the shapes of flowers as much as in the bodies of the bats themselves. Tubular, pale blossoms rich in nocturnal scent are evolutionary invitations, matched by the elongated tongues and hovering precision of nectar-feeding species. Round, fleshy fruits ripening at night are another adaptation, conspicuous and fragrant to nocturnal frugivores while largely invisible to diurnal dispersers. The rainforest itself bears the signature of these ancient agreements, a testimony to coevolution written in petals and wings. Yet their role is not secure. Habitat destruction, hunting and disease have placed enormous pressure on bat populations worldwide. In the Amazon, the loss of roost sites and declines in flowering and fruiting trees due to deforestation threaten their survival. The cascading consequences are profound. Fewer pollinators for night-blooming species, reduced seed dispersal across fragmented landscapes, unchecked insect populations. The unraveling of bat communities is not merely a loss of individuals, but a weakening of the very processes that regenerate the forest. Conservation of bats, therefore, is not just about saving a single group of mammals, but about safeguarding the ecological machinery of the night. To witness bats at work is to perceive the rainforest in a different register. One might stand at a riverside clearing and feel the air alive with invisible movement, wings darting overhead as flowers sway under the weight of their visitors. A kapok tree blooms, its enormous flowers opening in the dark, and within minutes bats arrive, dipping and vanishing in a rhythm too fast for the eye to follow. Seeds fall silently in distant fields, carried and released by unseen mouths. Insects that might have defoliated saplings vanish into hungry bellies. The forest breathes more evenly because these mammals fly, unseen yet indispensable. In the hierarchy of Amazonian life, Bats may never command the awe of jaguars or the spectacle of anacondas. But they are builders of continuity, bridging day to night, gap to forest, flower to seedling. They are the uncelebrated engineers of the rainforest's resilience, their nightly flights stitching together a system that would collapse without them. The forest at night belongs to bats, not in dominance but in service, in the constant weaving of connections that allow life to persist.